can. Okay, and so we'll start the recording, right?
Yeah.
If everyone who isn't one of our speakers could put yourself on mute so that we don't have background distractions, that would be great. And I'm going to now, well, I'll ask now if anyone has any other announcements that we should give for the beginning here. There'll be another chance at the end of the presentation and session to make any announcements as well. I'm going to turn things over now to Kevin Green, who very appropriately is the chair of Sustainable Tucson's Zero Waste Committee, and he will introduce our speakers. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Paula. Good evening. We have two speakers tonight from the University of Arizona who will be discussing their research on communication strategies that encourage people to rethink the use of disposable plastic bags. It's a very timely topic. Plastic shopping bags were introduced in the US in 1965, and they made their way into most checkout lines by 1979. It's been estimated that Americans use an average of 365 plastic bags per person per year. In 2018, the US EPA estimated that Americans generated nearly 9 billion pounds of polyethylene films, bags, and wraps annually. Of the EPA's 2018 figure, only 11% of the materials were recovered, mostly at collection bins at stores. The low recycling rates are due to the inaccessibility of the take-back bins and contamination of the plastic bags from leftover foods or liquids, as well as non-film items that are disposed of in the containers. So the vast majority of disposable plastic bags and films wind up in landfills, incinerators, waterways, and oceans. Our first speaker tonight is Wuyu Liu. Rain is the assistant professor of communications at the University of Arizona. She currently teaches courses in public relations, intercultural communication, interpersonal communication, persuasion, research methods, and communication campaign design and analysis. Our second speaker is Taylor Foerster. Taylor is a PhD student in the communications department at the university, and her research is multidisciplinary in nature, and interests include environmental and science communication. We're going to have Rain go first, and she'll be followed by Taylor. And we'd like to hold off questions unless you have some clarifying question, put it in the chat box, but we'd like to hold off questions until both presentations are completed. And if you do have a question, feel free to put that in the chat box. Trace and Paul are going to monitor it. So I'd like to turn things over to Rain for our first presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin, and of course, Tress and Paula for helping with monitoring our talk tonight. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming for our talk. Actually, Taylor will lead the first part, and I will be the one who's going to talk about the most exciting part, the results. But Taylor will, of course, help with giving lots of the background information, a little bit of the terminologies. We will try our best to make it fun and useful as a real world case, because both of us conduct research in environment communication. We really want to make our study results applicable in some real world cases, not just, I always say, I don't want my results stay on journals, only available for academia people to read, and that's it. To care about how my research, our research could really generate some real impact to help, even if it's just a little bit, right? To help our environment and to help really with the conservation efforts. So that's kind of our plan for tonight. Again, we will try to make it as conversational, as casual as possible, but really deliver the most interesting, most applicable findings. It's also at the very preliminary stage in terms of the analysis. Eventually, we'll probably conduct the more in-depth analysis results to help review more findings. But today we're going to focusing more on some descriptive analysis results, more preliminary. But without further ado, I think, Taylor, I will hand over to you, start with some background information. Maybe you can also talk a little bit about yourself if you would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for the introduction, Kevin, and everyone for having us here tonight. I'm really excited to be here and to present this research. So my name is Taylor. I'm going to start off this presentation on our research titled The Effectiveness of Persuasive Normative Messages and Financial Incentives in Reducing Plastic Bag Use. Can everyone see my screen okay before I get started? Okay, awesome. All right, so given that we are at Sustainable Tucson tonight, I am sure that you are all pretty well aware of the use and effects of plastic on our environment. Kevin provided us a lot of really great statistics. It was funny, I was actually going through statistics and trying to figure out what to present tonight. And Kevin's data he presented was actually in my top stuff as well, but I actually avoided that and I chose a different one. So you're getting all kinds of great information today. Well, great in the sense that it's knowledge, right? So to start us off here, Americans use roughly 100 billion plastic bags per year, and typically we don't use those bags for very long. So usually bags aren't used for more than an hour. I've even seen sources that said that the average plastic bag is not used for longer than 12 minutes. Yet a large number of plastics, we're producing a lot of them, we're using a lot of them. But as Kevin mentioned in the EPA reports, we're not seeing a lot of that plastic waste being recycled. And that's interesting as well because we continue to use plastic bags in arguably or almost every grocery store, with the exception of, I believe Whole Foods doesn't use plastic bags at checkout. But every other grocery store, speaking from my experience, I've seen them there in Tucson. So there's a whole bunch of them being used, they're not being recycled, and unfortunately, they're available in every single grocery store, essentially. While they are offered in most grocery stores, they're also offered for free, and they're often the norm for packaging our groceries, right? So you go to the checkout, sometimes they ask you the question, paper, plastic. Most of the time, if you don't bring your reusable bags at the forefront, your groceries are getting packaged in plastic, which probably contributes to this giant number here. However, on a lighter note here, there have been movements to ban the usage of plastic bags in grocery stores in states such as California and Vermont, for example. There are a few other states here, but this is just some examples. So in California and Vermont, there are laws prohibiting the use of plastic bags in checkouts at grocery stores, such that they can be used in some cases for bulk items, but not for packaging your groceries. And plastic or paper bags are offered as an alternative, but there is a charge associated with those paper bags in some of these states to kind of further incentivize using your own reusable bags, because that's best case. And there have also been a lot of efforts to incentivize bringing your own bags. So things such as charges. So if you need to use those paper bags, as I mentioned in like Vermont and California, there is like a 10-cent charge associated with the use of the paper bags that the store provides. And then discounts also, if you've been to Sprouts in Tucson, or there's some other stores that do this as well, you get like a 10-cent discount for bringing your own reusable bag to kind of incentivize people to stop using plastic bags and to bring their own bags as an alternative. And there's a lot of risks that plastic bags pose to the environment. So for example, I'm just going to give a few examples here. I don't have the time to cover all of them here, and I'm sure you're all very well aware. So to the environment, so litter accumulation in public areas, clogging drains and waterways that eventually create habitats for things like disease-carrying vectors such as mosquitoes. Obviously, litter in the environment is not good. It has a lot of really bad implications surrounding it, especially in the case of plastic bags. In addition to the environment, we also have to think of those who live in the environment, including ourselves, but also the wildlife and marine ecosystems in particular have been much in the spotlight in relation to plastic bags. So entanglement and ingestion by seabirds, mammals, and turtles, as you can see in the image here, is another concern and risk that plastic and plastic bags pose to wildlife and marine ecosystems. And then also at the forefront of these risks is our own human health. So we see risks to the environment, the wildlife, the ecosystems at large, and of course we are a part of those systems, and human health can also be affected. So for people who do consume seafood or animals that are ingesting this plastic, we can subsequently be impacted by those microplastics as well ourselves. So this is really what is called like a One Health perspective, which is where the environment meets people all coming together in this intertwined interface here, which we see plastics affecting at each of those arms. So how do we reduce the use of plastic bags, right? This is why you're all here. I'm sure this is the question we're all asking and asking ourselves, asking our friends, looking towards the media and presentations like these for. So how do we reduce the use of plastic bags so that we can live a more sustainable life, a less wasteful life, and to mitigate some of these effects on the environment, our animals, and ourselves? So effective communication strategy may be a valuable tool in our efforts. This may seem fairly obvious since we're both coming from the communication department, but prior research, in addition to us just being from the communication department, prior research points to norms as an effective tool for social influence. And if you're not familiar with the term norm, that is okay, because I'm going to take a big deep dive into social norms right now. But we're thinking that norms can help us to kind of mitigate plastic bag use, to get people involved and reduce their own plastic bag usage. So what are social norms? There are two types of norms that fall into this category of social norm. The first one is called descriptive norms. And what descriptive norms are essentially are our beliefs around the prevalence of a behavior, in this case, using plastic bags. So this is the beliefs about what most others do. These are perceptions on behavioral prevalence, as I just mentioned, things we gather from observations. So I go to the grocery store and I see several people using plastic bags. Or alternatively, what we'd like to see in the future is I go to the grocery store and I observe several people using reusable shopping bags. This can also be from existing knowledge, so things, your past experience, things you've seen in the past, and interactions with your social groups. So this is how we form our perceptions of behavior prevalence, essentially, and that's what these descriptive norms are. For example, somebody could hold this belief surrounding descriptive norms. So I believe most members in my family bring their own bags when grocery shopping. So again, I believe most members in my family is pointing us towards the prevalence of the behavior, which in this case is bringing plastic bags or bringing reusable bags, in contrast to a plastic bag. The second category of norms that falls under this idea of social norms more broadly is called injunctive norms. And what injunctive norms are, in contrast to the prevalence beliefs about what most others do, injunctive norms are perceptions on approval and disapproval of that behavior. So specifically, it's beliefs about what ought to do or what you ought not to do. So essentially, do other people approve of this behavior? And how does that influence me in the case of social norms influence? For example, here we have, I believe most members of my family disapprove of plastic bag use. So we have descriptive norms, the prevalence, and then injunctive norms. What do people think about behavior? All right. And there's quite a bit.
I just want to quickly pause. Is there any questions so far?
Oh yeah, if anyone has any questions, please.
Any questions? Okay, good, we're good. And I do want to quickly mention both norms we're talking about here are all about perceptions, beliefs. So the perceptions or beliefs people hold may not be always consistent with the facts, which means most of the time, like Taylor mentioned, our perceptions are formed based on reality, right? What we see around us, our observations, our existing knowledge, things, all of them together in combination could help us to formulate a certain belief or perception, but it may not really reflect what's really going on around us. So again, we sometimes call that perceived norms because it's all in our head about the beliefs. So I just want to quickly mention that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for adding that. And that's a really important point too, because sometimes there's a conflict between what we perceive to be happening and then what is actually happening. And that's kind of where communication steps in as well. But there's a lot of evidence pointing towards social norms in the environmental context and how we can harness norms in our communicative messages in order to encourage pro-environmental behavior. So for example, there are tons of studies on norms in the environmental context, but Faro in 2017 here did a lot of the hard work for me for this presentation and collected numerous articles about norms and pro-environmental behavior and compared their findings. So basically did a giant review of a lot of articles and said, okay, what is the majority consensus here? Ultimately, what they found was that normative messages can be an effective strategy for behavior change in relation to pro-environmental behaviors, and specifically noted the influence of descriptive norms. So again, that's our perception of the prevalence of the behavior around us. In addition to this, Borg in 2020 looked at the theory of normative social behavior, which again looks at descriptive norms and their influence on behavior or behavioral intention to engage in different behaviors, along with a couple of other mediators, including things like injunctive norms and outcome expectations. So if I perform this behavior, what is going to be the outcome for me? So Borg looked at that theory, which is a normative influence theory, and found support for the use of norms on plastic avoidance specifically. So we're seeing norms be effective in pro-environmental behaviors at large, and then also in plastic avoidance intentions and attitudes in this Borg et al. Paper in 2020. There is also the concept of dynamic norms. There are so many types of norms that we can use in our disposal, which is really great. Dynamic norms being one of the ones that we chose for this study. So what a dynamic norm is that dynamic norms indicate that a change in a social norm is occurring. So what does that look like? For example, a dynamic norm would be more people are bringing reusable bags when shopping than ever before. So we're indicating a change here when we use messaging in this way. More people are bringing it than ever before. We're indicating that the behavior is becoming more prevalent. And to add some more evidence to this, because that's what we're all about here, Lodsher et al. In 2019 found that dynamic norms were effective in persuading customers to use a reusable cup versus a disposable one. So again, we're seeing the influence of norms be fairly positive in the case of environmental behaviors. And then, so we also looked at financial incentives in this study, and Rain will talk about this in more detail about our study specifically. But in terms of financial incentives, these are the ones that you might have seen already. So past research has looked at the effects of surcharges and discounts in relation to plastic bag reduction. For example, a surcharge would be something like customers must pay 25 cents for plastic bags. So for every plastic bag a customer uses, they are charged. It's kind of this incentive to avoid plastic because you don't want to be charged for that bag. Alternatively, we have discounts. So these are messages such as customers receive 25 cents off for each reusable bag used. Again, used as somewhat of an incentive to say, hey, if you bring your own bags, you will save money. So you'll either lose money by using a plastic bag or save it in the form of a discount. And again, for more evidence, more context here, Liverman in 2019 looked at the effectiveness of norms, surcharges, and discounts in relation to reusable mugs, similar to the last study. And what they found was that surcharges, so telling customers that they will have to pay for plastic bag usage, was more effective than the discount. And that is hypothesized to be because the act of using a plastic bag is then seen as disapproved of. So if you have to pay for it, it's something that you really shouldn't be engaging in. That's the theory behind that. So we see a bunch of different norms in addition to these incentives at the forefront of the research here, including our own. So just a bit of a summary here. So descriptive norms are in relation to prevalence. So when we talk about descriptive norms, we are talking about the perception of how prevalent a behavior is. How many people use plastic bags? How many people use a reusable shopping bag when they're at the grocery store? Injunctive norms, in contrast, focus on this idea of approval/disapproval. Do people approve of somebody bringing a reusable grocery bag to the grocery store? Dynamic norms focus on changes. So if we're looking at dynamic norms, that could be something like more and more people are bringing a reusable shopping bag to the grocery store. And then we have surcharges and discounts. So surcharges, you will have to pay for using bags. Discounts, we will essentially pay you in the form of a discount for using your own bag. So that's just a bit of a summary here of some key terms that you will hear when Rain goes into our study specifically. But just to provide a broad overview of what our study is and what we looked at, we essentially looked at this idea of how might the different types of norms that I just discussed, so injunctive, descriptive, dynamic norms, encourage plastic bag reduction. And also, do charges and discounts play an important role? So we used a combination of different messages. Rain will go more into that now, but that's just an overview of key terms and such that you should know as a background to our study. So I'm going to hand it over to Rain now. Let me stop sharing my screen here.
All right, thank you, Taylor. Before I jump into my part to talk about our study specifically, I still want to leave just a few minutes if there are any questions from the audience. Just make sure our terminology at least are kind of understandable to people.
I have one question.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm wondering how visible, I've noticed that when I get up to the checkout in natural grocers, say, and I'm paying, and she says, "Thank you very much for bringing your bag. We'll give you 5 cents or 10 cents. I can't remember how much it is off of your purchase." And it doesn't seem like that's displayed anywhere else. It doesn't really come up until you're checking out.
Yeah, that's a super good point. You will soon see how we conducted the study and make the sign really visible. You will soon see that. And that's also something we would suggest for future, if any grocery store is interested in joining this effort. We as communication scholars strongly advocate them to putting signs or posters visible to shoppers to make it at least easy to process or understand by them, rather than, like Jennifer, you mentioned, you're only aware of all those kind of things, discount or surcharge or whatsoever. Even you actually receive a thank you for doing that, which is consistent with our social approval if you think about it, because you are pretty much get basically praised for doing that, right, by someone else. That's not your close others, that's just someone from the store. Those can all be serving as a social approval cue. That's a very good example. So yeah, that's a good question. I will show something from our study and of course talking about the implications.
Okay,
good.
Thank you.
Sure, perfect. So any other questions before I jump into my part? Okay, great. Alrighty, let me share my screen. I'll go to the specific page. Okay, perfect. Okay, one moment. Okay. Is my screen showing up? Okay, awesome, perfect. All right, so next I'll just give, okay, I'm trying to pull out the viewers, okay, audience, so I can see people. Okay, good. All right, so next I'm going to talk about the method, our study design, and some preliminary findings, and also some preliminary implications we thought would be useful, helpful for people, either in advocacy group or grocery stores who are trying to join this effort. First, I want to quickly mention something as Taylor also mentioned, since we still have some time. Social norm study, even if it's just one simple, very quick sentence, most people around you are doing something, where most people in your family are joining this effort, or most people in this grocery store thank you for bringing your own bag. Even just one simple message, believe it or not, after decades of research is showing this simple message is powerful. This one simple message is powerful in changing people's behaviors because it helped to shape people's perceptions. Social norm study where social norm messages have been widely used in health problems, actually, health issues, especially binge drinking among college students in the United States. There is a social norm center established in past several years at Michigan State University, where I received my PhD from. So the Social Norm Center is specifically collecting research and also organizing events or activities to really help people study how to develop those simple messages to reduce the binge drinking problem. The logic is very simple. Everybody, well, most people went to college, were at certain social group, you understand why you got into drinking. Because you felt like most people around me were all my buddies, all my roommates, they're drinking. So I should also drink. That's really how social norm message is working. Your perception, though we found it's not reflecting the truth, which means there is a discrepancy between what's really happening versus what students are perceiving. There is a gap, there is a discrepancy. So what we do as researchers is literally promoting the message to fill up this gap, to correct the inaccurate perceptions regarding what's your perception versus what's really happening. So just a little bit background regarding why because for people who are unfamiliar to this concept, you may feel like, how could this actually work? How do people believe it? From social psychology research, it is actually working. But of course, we're talking about it in the context of environmental behaviors. Environment behavior is really interesting. Why we're thinking using social norms? Think about, this is a specific context or issue that really needs a collective effort, correct? It's not like I use reusable bag, Taylor used reusable bag, Jennifer used reusable bag, and then we can resolve this issue. No, it's not the case. It really requires a collective effort from a social group to really generate where we can reach a tipping point to reach really a significant impact. That's one very unique attribute about environment behavior. That is another reason why we're trying to use social influence, persuasive messages to address those problems. Okay, this is very different from health issue. Health issue, if I smoke, then I stop smoking, my health will significantly improve immediately, correct? But if this is a health problem, we just cannot cure it by each individual single behavior. Okay, so just give a little bit background about environmental behavior. So our study in total, we collected more than 1,000 samples, and this is a nationally representative sample in the United States. So it's an online experiment. Basically, we conducted an experiment online via Qualtrics, which is the online platform. It feels like a survey, but we actually incorporated different message inductions. So people were randomly assigned to watch a different video with different message induction. So that's kind of our design. Nationally represented sample means a quota sample, where we were trying to balance the sex, biological sex of our sample. We're trying to do 50-50, so we can gain both opinions from males versus females. Very interestingly, by the end of the data collection, we had to loosen up that criteria a little bit more to recruit, to let more female participants to join the study. Can someone explain why we have to loosen that criteria to get a little bit more female? Any guess? A little bit interaction, right? Any reason? Can people think about the reason why we actually end up with more female participants?
More women do the shopping?
Exactly. Exactly. That's the reason why. Because we do want to make sure, I'll talk about some eligibility for participants. We want to make sure they're actually shoppers, right? And then later on we found, yeah, women are still the main shoppers for the home. So we had to loosen up the sex quota a little bit more by the end. But we did reflect the most recent census data from the US, including the race, the racial backgrounds, and also population density to make sure in the 5 main regions of the country, we collected the data reflecting the population density. Again, it's not a random sampling. We cannot really say our results can be 100% generalizable to the entire nation. But it is a representative sample, which means we're trying our best to represent people's thoughts and opinions in this study. So, where is that? Okay, so to be able to eligible for this study, our participant must be a US citizen who has been living in this country for at least the past 5 years. Many reasons for doing that. First of all, different nations have very different regulations regarding plastic bags. Okay, I was from a different country and my country has very different regulations. And I was talking to Taylor about when in Japan, we're in South Korea, there are very strict recycling laws. There are like 10 different bins. Every person needs to understand how to recycle. Even just one milk box, there are probably 3 or 5 pieces you need to recycle at different bins. So we want to make sure it is culturally appropriate and people understand, where people will be able to immerse themselves while they were watching the video induction to feel they were really shopping in a shopping grocery store that is next to their home. So that's kind of the reason why we wanted to make sure those eligibility criteria has been filled up. There were 2 control conditions included in the study. Control condition for people who understand experiment just means we're trying to make sure there is a comparison group. There's a group who did not receive any treatment. They're just as natural as possible so that we can compare the experimental results compared to this control group. We included 2 control groups. One is no message. So we did not give them any message induction. Another is environmental message only, which is basically all the message you saw everywhere in grocery store or anywhere to promote any environmental behavior, which I will show in a moment. In addition to that, we had 13 environmental conditions. Yes, we had 13. So in total, there was 15 conditions. That's the reason why we had to collect such a large sample to make sure each cell has enough people so we can compare the results. So the 13 experimental conditions, including messages with discrete norm, inject norm, surcharge, discount, and dynamic norms, all of that Taylor had just talked about. We also made some combinations of either 2 or 3 combined. That's the reason why we had 13 experimental conditions. Again, I'll talk about in a moment. Okay, so this is the message induction video. No matter which condition the participant has been assigned to, they all watch this video. But I'll stop at one moment to tell you what was not shown to the control condition people. Okay, so for people who were in the control condition, they didn't see this part. Does that make sense? So they only saw the part that you walk into the grocery store and that's it. But for people who actually was in any of the other conditions, including the environmental message condition, they're going to see this part as well. This is where the message induction came up. And what we're showing you is the environmental message. It's very, very commonly understand, we're very commonly seeing messaging anywhere. Okay, just really thanking them for reusing your bag, which we call that control condition, but in with environmental message. Each participant was given enough time to really be able to read the message. So they cannot skip it. They cannot really just move on to the next page. We set up the timer. So they have to like force them to read through the message. Okay, so that's how we did that part. So the message design, everything is exactly same because it's experiment. We only varied the part we need to vary. For the norm message only, as you can see, we kind of trying to highlight most shoppers in the store to really elicit the group affinity or group identity to make them feel like, okay, I am part of the shoppers in this exact store. Okay, so this is the descriptive norm message. As you can tell, most shoppers in the store bring their own bag to help the environment. This is really trying to tell them about the prevalence of this behavior. While this message, most shoppers in the store support bringing your own bag to help the environment. Very strong. We're in the non-condescending way to tell people we approve, we support the behavior of bringing the bag here, okay, which is an injunctive norm message. As you can tell, we thank you for saving our planet by reusing your bag, which is actually the control condition, the environmental message. The reason why we tested that as a condition is trying to see any effects we saw among participants was not due to this message, was actually due to our other message, okay? And that's a norm message. That's a dynamic norm message. Dynamic norm, as Taylor just talked about, is about how our society is changing. We may not actually reach there like the prevalent yet, but it's getting better. So this norm reads, this is still, we highlighted the most shoppers part, but we're just saying more and more shoppers in the store bring their own bag to help environment. And more and more shoppers in the store support, blah, blah, blah. This is a dynamic injunctive norm. This is a dynamic descriptive norm condition. Okay, I hope that makes sense to people how we are trying to operationalize based on the concept of those terms, but into a real poster design. Next are financial incentives. As you can tell, very easy to understand. Either you will be charged for 50 cents or you will receive 50 cents. Most of the store only give them 25 cents. Okay, most store across the country. So we're trying to make it even slightly larger, but not unrealistic to see if actually that will change people's behavior intentions for getting engaged in that behavior. And then, like I said, those are not all of the combinations, but I do want to show you. For example, this message is most shoppers in the store support bringing your own bags, which is the injunctive norm message, plus the surcharge message. So we kind of combine these two together. And these two are most shoppers in the store bring their own bag, which is the descriptive norm, and the support, which is the injunctive norm, and also you're going to receive the discount. So this is a three message combination. So in social psychology, we do those combinations very often. You might feel like it's a lot, it could be overwhelming. Doesn't matter because we have other conditions by itself. We're two messages together. We can always do the comparisons across those different conditions. Okay, all right. Any questions so far? I do want to mention that from the video and from the poster, you can probably tell we were trying our best to remove any possible logos of the store, right? We do not want them to feel or to sense this is from a particular store because people shop differently at different places. We want a universal kind of design to make sure they only focus on the message itself rather than, oh, it's from Walmart, it's from Target, things like that. So that's a reason why we intentionally removed any possible identifiers of the store. Okay, alrighty. So we measured lots of stuff. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Again, it's not the most interesting part, but I do want to mention, I will show some demographics information of our participant and also their shopping behavior. It's very valuable to really understand what's American people's shopping behavior, right? Within using a study format with such a large sample. For example, where do they shop? What are the shopping method? Is that online or in person? What is the frequency for people to shop? Things like that. We actually also asked about their knowledge regarding, do you know if you're going to get discount or surcharge for using bags at certain store? We also collected that information. Their attitudes about using plastic bags. Attitude is another good indicator to predict the people's behavior or behavior intentions. We measure their environmental concern or their perceived hazards associated with plastic bags. Those can also predict their behavior of using reusable bag, and also perceived norms. There other things are related to the theory. I will not going to present, it's just a lot, but most important things I will talk about is how did our message actually induce certain perceived norms as we predicted, and also did those perception actually induce the different behavior intentions of using reusable bags. So these will be the two things we're going to focus in my results presentation. Okay. All right, so in terms of the demographics, the median age, the average age is about 50 years old, ranging from 18 to 93. The sex, as I mentioned, we were trying to do 50-50. It's still 50-50, but you can tell we have slightly more female participants than male. We have several others. Race is also reflecting what's going on in the US, a racial background, majority will be white, and we have Hispanic, Black, Asian, and some others. We also asked some questions would be relevant to their grocery shopping behavior, such as, are you living alone? You know, things like that. So majority of our participants were not living alone. They live either with their significant others, their kids, their parents, non-immediate relatives were roommates. So majority of people live with 1 to 3 others. Okay, that's around 84% of our participants. And then we asked them, are you responsible for shopping grocery? So majority of our participants, as you can tell, almost 74% are responsible for grocery shopping. Some are sharing responsibility with some others living together. And we have 5% who are not primary shoppers, but they still do some grocery shopping. So we did have another option. If they said, I'm not in charge of shopping at all, that person will be removed from the subsequent survey because that's not someone we would target, right? So we only included people who at least share some shopping responsibility at their household. So we asked, where do they shop? Okay, very simple understanding. If they only shop online, those are not our target audience. They're not going to see any posters, right? So we eliminated people who said they shop 100% online. But still majority of people, almost 70% are shopping in person, while 1/3 of people shop online or in person. Okay, so the weekly grocery trip, most people shop only there once to twice, and then some like 10% doing 3 times. We did see some more trips, but not that many. I suspected those are the people who would like shop every day there, like get something for dinner and then go back home. But majority of people only go there 1 to 3 times per week. Okay. All right, so some other quick information. We believe things like annual household income will be important, and maybe their education level. So we collected those information. And I want to mention that both data, the education and also household income, are reflecting the real US household income and education based on the census data. We kind of compared it. They're reflecting that. And marital status, majority of our, not majority, 40% are married. And then we have a bunch of single people. And we also asked about their political ideology. As we all know, whenever that's environmental behavior or environmental beliefs, ideology could play a big role in that process. So eventually when we start to do more inferential statistics, we're going to factor those background information into our study, but I will not present that today, but I do want to let you know it's very nicely in our data. We kind of have all 3 major parts, independent, Republican, Democrat, kind of in 1/3, in our sample. So that could give us a balanced view from people with different political ideology. Okay. Some most interesting thing we asked, in addition to demographics, is where do you shop, right? We wanted to know what is American people's preference in our, at least in our representative sample. So we asked them, we gave them a bunch of lists, which is literally all the major stores in the US. Of course, we give them local store that option, and we give them like a box, they can fill up the name of that specific local store. So then they can rank the top 3 where they shop the most. Based on the information, Walmart is the winner. Okay, we can tell. Definitely lots of people shop there, and then their local store. Those are not like really franchised around in the entire nation. Alden, Kroger's, Fry's, they're in the same group. If you guys don't know, they belong to the same company. Of course, some others, but we definitely see lots of people, which again is showing. Fun fact, if you don't know that, I teach students about it. Walmart is the #1 global company in this entire world. It is the #1 global company, very large. So as we can tell, also its influential power among the grocery shoppers. Of course, only knowing where they shop is not enough. We asked about why do you shop there? We gave them a bunch of reasons. Of course, we also gave them other reasons so they can fill up their own reason. Very interestingly, we wanted to know if a specific store, if you pay attention here, if a specific store embrace environmental friendly corporate value, or if they give them like free plastic or paper bag, would that actually have any impact on people's shopping intention there? Not surprisingly, not at all. People don't care about that at all. Okay, so what they actually care in their shopping reason is that convenient, close to where I live? Do they get everything I need, a variety of selections? And also, do they have a lower price? I bet if we conduct this study right now, the lower price will probably be the #1 reason, considering the inflation everywhere right now. But this is what we would expect. We were just wondering, where is the reason for environmental friendly corporation value? Everything stand. Not surprisingly, it is rated as the least important thing among shoppers whenever they choose the stores. Okay. All right. So for the results regarding their environmental attitudes and concerns, okay, all the measures are measured based on 1 to 5. Okay, the most standard Likert scale measurements ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. 1 is standing for strongly disagree. 5 is standing for strongly agree. Okay, so you can tell the higher number, the more better attitude they hold. Okay, the higher number, the more concerns they have. So if we look at the mean here, okay, for ATT means attitude towards environment, towards actually plastic bags, our mean is above the midpoint, which is 3. And this is significantly above the midpoint. Not that super high, but at least our sample are somewhat concerned about the plastic bag use. They do not hold a super positive idea about using it. So which is probably a good thing. At least they understand it's not a good thing. They do not believe this is like plastic bag is really beneficial. They hold attitude against it. But again, it's not extremely high. It is about the midpoint. Okay. For environmental concerns, we ask them the concerns. Those are established measures. We ask their concerns about nature, about myself, like themselves, including their health, lifestyle, future, things like that, and also entire human being and their future generation. As we can tell, the number is ranging from the highest 4.23 to the lowest 3.82. Yeah, they care a lot about things like the nature, and then of course the future generation. The least cared among all of them is themselves. However, it's still, again, like I said, significantly above 3. This is almost 4. So we can tell people do in our sample hold concerns about environment? Okay. Lastly, are there perceived environmental hazards related to plastic pollution? Remember, our question was about, do you believe there is pollution at where you live? So this is not about pollution worldwide. This is really about where they live. And then the pollution to their air, to the water, to the any, does that impose any danger to where they live? So those are the 3 questions. And we can tell, especially for air pollution, where any danger it caused at where they live, those are significantly below 3, which means they do not believe there are any haphazard, any danger imposed because of plastic pollutions at where they live. The only thing that's literally at the midpoint, it's not significantly different from the midpoint, which means people hold an average view towards the plastic pollution in the water at where they live. So this is kind of the thing they only concerned about, but still it's an average level, not super duper concerned about the pollution caused by plastic at where they live. So these are some attitudes and also concerns. Lastly, this is based on our conditions. Again, they're preliminary findings. The yellow dots are behavior intentions. Okay, we can tell these are all the conditions: no message, environmental message, the descriptive norm, injunct norm, surcharge, discount, and then all kinds of combinations. And the last 2 are dynamic norms. And then the blue dots are perceived descriptive norms. The red dots or red lines are the perceived injunct norms. Remember, injunct norms, social approval, descriptive norms, perceive the prevalence of behavior. So let's take a look quickly here. Can you guys see my mouse moving? Okay, all right, perfect. So we can see this is for control condition, no message, which is what we expected. If there's no message really posted, people did not see anything, their perceptions of norms and also their behavior intention is the lowest. Okay, so if we do not give any message, there's really no elicited or induced normative perception, and also their behavior intention is relatively low. Interestingly, the first thing you probably notice is that all the blue dots, the blue lines are the lowest compared to all the red lines. Kind of makes sense, which means no matter what, people's perceived prevalence of others using reusable bag are very low. In general, they don't believe what they saw in the grocery store. They don't see any people, they don't see a prevalent behavior of using reusable bag. No matter what we tell them in the message, they just don't believe it because it's not something they observed. Okay, so that's kind of something consistent with the reality, but also showing how descriptive norm message did not work effectively because, again, it's inconsistent with the reality or with what people saw. On the contrary, okay, in the country, as we can see, the injunctive norm perceptions, those are much, much higher than the descriptive norm perceptions, which means people all believe it is socially approved. People want me to do it. It would make me look good if I actually do this. If I use reusable bag, this is socially approved. This is supported socially. Okay, so that's what's showing in general. Let's quickly look at something I just want to mention. Injunctive norm. As you can tell, injunctive norm, no matter that's the perception or the behavior intention, we see a much higher number than others. Okay, remember we have a large sample, so even if a smaller difference in the means, that could also be significant. Maybe the effect size would not be that huge, but we would be able to detect the difference across the conditions. So injunctive norm is kind of working. It kind of induced some more perceptions of social approval and consequently would bring more behavior intention of bringing you reusable back. Another thing is surcharge and discount. If you look at surcharge and discount, once we only have surcharge with discount information, the behavior intention is actually low or no difference compared to some other condition. So in general, no matter you tell them, give them 50 cents off or charge them 50 cents, it's actually not working. It's from our study. Okay, financial incentive was not paid attention. Okay, let's look at here. Dynamic norm. Remember, that is how more and more people are doing that. Look at that. This is dynamic discrete norm, which means we're telling people this may not be the truth now, but more and more people are bringing their reusable bag. And that would be actually perceived much more true than we just tell them lots of people already brought their bag to the store. Okay, we're telling them the future trend rather than like telling them what's happening right now. And that is actually working, you know, in terms of generating more behavior intention and also bringing a little bit more higher perceived discrete norms compared to some other conditions. Okay, so these are, of course, we can talk forever about lots of interesting things and also some combinations. But I just want to give you some of the most outstanding findings we quickly noticed by looking at the data. Okay, all right, so some implications, which I also kind of just talked about. We did see the power of norms, especially the injunctive norms in this case, different from like binge drinking problem I just shared with you guys. In our situation, for environmental problem, it's more about social desirability. I talked to Taylor one day. I'm those one. I've been using my reusable bags for years. Okay, so I'm the one who went to the store, and actually one day, and actually many days, I got praised by the checkout cashier. She's like, "Oh, this is so good. Oh, you brought your bag, you know, all the time." That make me feel good, you know. That even make me feel I look good, compared to someone who's probably staying in the line behind me. That's at least my personal feeling. I think that's how injunct norm is kicked in at this moment. Nobody wants to be looked bad, correct? Everybody wants some self-esteem, some positivity. So that's how we might be able to actually kick in or apply some of the injunct norm in our message designing. Okay. Next, the implication or takeaway lesson. The low perceived discrete norm, not much perceived prevalence in this case. So we have the potential to adopt dynamic norm in the message. So some stores could possibly use the dynamic norm message to really promote the behavior. Maybe a combination of injunct norm to make people feel this socially supported, socially important, versus also more and more people are joining this group to bring their bag. If we can combine these two messages, that might work. We did not test that in our study because we already have so many conditions, but maybe this still needs future research, but theoretically, we're from our showing findings here, it seems like have some potential to work the best. Lastly, surcharge versus discount, they're not significant difference across the board, if you wonder. And neither of them is really very helpful. Okay, so on the other side, financial incentives could even weaken the norm perceptions. Okay, both perceived behavior prevalence and social approval could be diminished, could be weakened because people think about before, okay, without money, think about the situation. You go to the store, you use your reusable bag because this makes me feel good. I'm doing something for the environment. Now you were paid where you get discount. The internal motivation could have been changed. Now you're just thinking, well, I'm doing that for the discount. I'm doing that for the money. I'm doing that because I don't need to be charged for actual dollars. Okay. This is not what I said, what I speculated. This has been demonstrated in millions, like numerous studies, especially studying something called crowd out effect. So in some less developed countries, such as Africa, lots of the government pay people to do some eco-friendly movement, which is called PES program, payment for eco-service, such as I will pay you if you do not cut more trees. Okay, things like that. And then social scientists and also economists later on found it caused a devastating effects on the social norms in that certain community, because once the money is gone, people's whole motivation would be changed to, oh, you don't pay me anymore, I will not do any environmental friendly activities. That has been showing throughout decades of research. So our study is kind of, we're paying less, not really a lot. And also it's only, you know, every time you shop, but we're still seeing some similar effects from the financial incentive. Plus, people did not even pay attention to those financial incentive messages. Okay, so as kind of a wrap up, Taylor, you want to jump in to kind of just summarize?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before
Close
we
the
move to
question.
that, can I interrupt for just a second to follow up on the points you were making at the end about surcharge and discount? We did have a question about whether you asked the participants if they preferred a monetary incentive, getting money back, or having to pay for a plastic paper bag, which would be a cost to them. Did you ask about their preference for one or the other?
Oh, Taylor, you want to jump in or?
I don't believe so. I don't think we did. We did ask if the grocery store provided a surcharge or a discount, but I don't think we asked their opinion on it, at least.
Yeah, so basically while we were asking, where did you shop, why you shop there, we also asked them, are you aware of the policy regarding the bag? Are you paying for any bag? We gave them plastic bag, paper bag, or both. We gave them those options, and then they can tell us what kind of bags were provided at those stores and what store, like if the store actually charge you or give you a discount. The findings are very mixed. It's very obvious. I did not really present it here because it's very obvious people are completely in the dark. They don't understand. You can see the same store, Walmart, have probably, because I have thousands of data entry, right? I have hundreds of different answers regarding that, which means people have a very mixed understanding regarding those policy, I think, which is consistent from what Jennifer just mentioned. You were not clearly told where there's no signage, so people are actually not aware of that. So that was the only question we asked to about their knowledge regarding that. Taylor, oh, you wanted to wrap up?
Oh yeah, can you click on the icons here?
Yes.
That would be great. Thank you so much. If you can click just the second one as well. Thank you. All right, so just to wrap up, just a little bit of a call to action for you all. I'm sure you're already doing this, but just a reminder, bring your reusable bags, be a part of that influence to facilitate those perceptions of social norms being strong. Tell people you approve of their reusable bags. Go out, flaunt your reusable bags, show them it's cool to be zero or minimal waste, right? And also, if you do find yourself in the need of plastic bags at the grocery store, if you happen to get plastic bags for whatever reason, there are bins out in front of most of the grocery stores, if not all of them, that you can recycle your plastic bags in. So if you do find yourself with a plastic bag, just know that there are routes to get those into a bin. Right.
Yeah, that's all of our presentation with some references. All right. Hope we did not make it too academic and make it understandable to people. All right. Do we just go with, I saw a hand from Danya.
Hi, thank you. I'm curious, when you asked people their motivations for selection of grocery stores, did you allow them only one option, or did you allow multiple options?
Yeah, we actually gave them multiple options. We gave them the whole list, as I showed you. We also give them like a box if they want to just enter their other reasons. We did get some other reasons. We asked them to select from list the top 3. the top 3
Okay.
reasons. So each person got to choose at least, well, at most 3 reasons. And those are also ranked to see which ones makes the most sense to them.
Thank you. And my second question is, how did you choose the participants in your survey?
Oh, how did we choose them?
Yeah, how did you recruit for the?
Oh, gotcha. We recruited via Qualtrics Panel, which is a professional research company. They help us. Basically, we tell them the eligibility, the quota we need for our sample, and then they are just going to. They have tons of like a pool of people across the board, across the entire country and internationally. So we usually just collaborate with them. Of course, this is supported by a grant from the university. So we paid them for that.
Great. Thank you. I was just curious. I come from a research psychology background. So I mean, not only at a bachelor degree level. Okay. so not only just a little bit of knowledge there, but I'm just curious because I'm interested in psychological study design. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Do we want to look at the question? I think from the chat, has online shopping reduced? So Caroline asked, has online shopping reduced plastic bag use at all in the US? Taylor, did you answer that question already?
Kind of did. I haven't seen anything on this, so I kind of answered with an I don't know. So if anyone has any information on this though, do you, Rain, do you know?
I feel like, because I know those curbside pickup, whenever for grocery, I think most likely people are doing curbside pickup rather than like 2-day shipping or something, I guess, because then if that's fresh produce and then that cannot sustain such a long time. So I saw actually whenever I shop somewhere, people prepared those pickup bags for people. That's the same. It's if, for example, that's Kroger, they just give you Kroger plastic bags, as far as I know. But if that's Whole Foods, or if that's Trader Joe's, I don't know if Trader Joe actually do pick up, but I know Whole Foods do that. So if that's Whole Foods, yeah, they give you the paper bag. If you don't know, Whole Foods actually charge that. If you actually go there, use your own bag, you don't use theirs, they kind of give you discount. Still, like even for myself, I'm not sure if that's a discount or if that's actually a surcharge. They just charge you for the bag in your total grocery shopping. Yeah. Did you ask participants if they prefer monitoring? Yeah, we kind of answered that question. One issue with survey is that they don't always reflect the behavior. People take survey, tend to answer how they would like to think, how they believe. Do you make allowance for Dan asked the question. Basically, that's a very good question. Yes, it's an issue. What's the discrepancy? Behavior intention, that's what we measured. That's not the real behavior. But tons of meta-analysis is suggesting that behavior intention leads to future behavior or predicted future behavior to a large extent. There is a 0.8 correlation or even larger correlation between behavior intention to behaviors. So we believe the attitude and behavior intention will have a significant predicting power over people's future behavior. There could be, this is just a first study we conducted. There could be field experiment, which means we did produce those posters and then collaborate with certain store, and then we can go there, literally count how many people actually use reusable bag, in that way to measure real behavior as a second stage. That's totally something in our head. We just need more planning and of course getting more results from the study to think about how we can extend to a further study. But yeah, that's a good question. We did not really have any measurement for the specific behavior, and plus it's more self-reported. Okay. I believe that we are creating a Facebook community of people who are using reusable bags with people who are already inclined towards sustainability. The issue is that it is a bubble of influence. Yes, the challenge is to reach out beyond the bubble. Yes, that will be, Jenna mentioned that. I think it's a great point. Social norm would only work among people who feel they're part of the group, That is the reason why we're trying to really induce a feeling that you are one of the shoppers shopping at this specific store. Because in that way, we also measure their perceived group identity with people shopping the store. Okay, do you feel you're alike to them in terms of values, socioeconomic status, things like that? We also ask questions like that because theory suggested the more you feel alike to those people, the more likely you're susceptible to the normative message influence. So we're going to conduct more analysis on that. But it's very important, yes, someone would behave like you guys can behave as an influential figure, even just in the same store. I think was that Taylor you mentioned, praise people, right? Even just say, this is good, this is awesome. Just one word, that could actually make lots of power, where that can generate something to make them continue that behavior of reusing the bag. And of course, we need to continue to really promote the behavior outside of just the inner group who has already doing that. Taylor, I saw a hand.
Yeah, just another tip on that, on getting people to use the reusable bags. I have been recently gifting people reusable bags as presents. So if you need more reusable bags for your friends, they're great birthday presents, I would say.
Another very practical suggestion. I love that. Danya said, could you repeat a brief synopsis of the main conclusion? So Danya, because of the time, I think with that possible, I kind of just send you like the last page of kind of the implication. I think that's showed some of the results.
Thank you.
And Danya, remember that the recording will be available later in the week, so.
That's true. I'm sorry. I thought it was like maybe a 2-minute thing. I'm sorry, but no problem.
It's okay. Okay, I will try to make it seem common by blogging about it. Yeah, that's another very good point. Yeah, I feel like without like everybody individual, some small effort, like I said, even just one word, one simple message, or one delivery, dissemination of the message could actually generate some impact. Okay, so I hope our findings or our research can bring some information to you guys today. And also believe in yourself. I think that really the internal motivation makes a big difference compared to like financial incentives like money or something. The external drivers does not usually work the best as you can promote people's internal motivation to join the activity. Yeah, I think any other questions? I know we kind of took a little bit longer than expected.
No, that's fine. I wanted to follow up on what Jana was saying and may suggest that maybe really working with stores and encouraging them to train checkers to say something. I was at Trader Joe's earlier and actually remembered to take in my reusable bags, and the checker said, "Oh, I see the bags made it into the store," because apparently a lot of people say, "Oh, I forgot my bags out in the car."
Right.
I do all the time. So just getting some sort of comment like that can maybe reinforce people's motivation to use the reusable bags or remember to use the bags.
True.
Bring them in from the car.
True. That's super true. I even thought about at some point, I thought about, like we have those, you can borrow the umbrella at like in front of the hotels, right? Sometimes the hotel give you those checkout umbrella, you just need to bring back. Sometimes I thought to myself, can those stores actually provide some reusable bags like for people to use? If they're frequent shoppers, they can just bring that back if they forgot to bring. You know what I'm saying? Like, trust your situation. You forgot, but you still want to use reusable bag. You just don't have it and you park somewhere really far away. Can we have something like, borrow to the shoppers and they just need to return? I don't know, like sometimes I had those ideas to me, like to myself. Yeah, that just little things could actually help to generate some difference.
I wanted to ask in your research, and you didn't cover this, and I didn't expect you to, but did you run across any grocery chains or grocery stores that you think would be a model that are doing the messaging? The bags are displayed visibly. The checkout folks are reinforcing the message. Some stores are just phasing out. The national
Mhm.
stores are just phasing out the use of disposable bags. They're moving in that direction. Some are testing or piloting the rental, having a kiosk, and you would sort of rent the bag, or a place where you could get it and then return it easily rather than take it home. Actually, no, you have to bring it back. But
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if you came across any stores that you would kind of consider sort of playing a leadership role on this issue.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Taylor, you want to share some thoughts?
I don't know about in our research what I found, but I do know personally that when I go to Whole Foods, I've been asked in the past, do you need a bag? And that's kind of like in a way and a reminder, but not to the level that I would like to see and that you're describing.
I have to say though, there's no really systematic research on that so far. My general feeling is the more higher end grocery store, as we can tell, right? Whole Foods is offering paper bags, where any organic stores, those more expensive stores, even Trader Joe's. I don't think Trader Joe's is like the really below average in terms of price, everything. So that's what I observed. The stores they're targeting, maybe middle class or above people, they got involved in more of the efforts for using or supplying paper bags, or even having those reusable bags available, well, of course, for sale at the checkout place. So at least people have the choice. And I saw, for example, at Whole Foods, they have, in addition to just reusable grocery bag, I also have those, I don't know how to say, like a net bag. So I can put, with all the holes, like I can put the fresh produce, like vegetables, everything in. I don't know if people know what I'm talking about. There's a string, you can just pull it. And then, yeah, those bags are also available at the vegetable or fruits area. Yeah. Oh, so those are, can people still hear me?
Yeah.
Voice. Okay, good. So I just feel like those are, from my observation, those are more, they understand people shopping at their store, honestly, with higher socioeconomic status. So I guess they feel like they would care more about if our store is more environmental friendly. So they would do something like that. Again, I'm a PR professor. I understand that's also make them look good, make those store look good. So that's kind of my observation. But as we can tell, majority of people go to Walmart, go to their local store. If we're really trying to change the behavior among the majority, we have to get those larger stores on board. We're involved. Some behavior has to be changed among a larger population rather than just a small bubble around people who are shopping at those stores. That's kind of my personal thoughts.
We've got a couple of comments about what the policies are at different stores. Bruce notes that Natural Grocers doesn't give you a bag. You either have to bring your own or take or recycle one of their boxes. Food Conspiracy Co-op has always encouraged people to bring their own bags. Dan notes that Aldi doesn't provide bags either. And Costco doesn't have any bag options. They will put things in boxes, which are recyclable, but also very hard to pull apart in order to flatten them for recycling. That's just my own experience.
Right.
And Danya notes that she just takes items in the cart out to her car and loads them in her reusable bags when she forgets them out there. And that's what I think a lot of people were doing during the pandemic when at least some of the stores weren't letting you bring your own bags into the store. But they didn't want to collect a lot of plastic bags. So
True.
lots
That
of
was kind of a fun fact. Our study actually, Taylor just became my student back in 2019, right? Was that 2019, Taylor? We started the project. We got everything ready. We were about to launch it in February. We got the grant and everything in February 2019.
wonderful
And
things.
everybody knew what happened afterwards. And then we had to postpone our study until last year because you remember the hoarding, all the crazy things. So we were like, no, we cannot do this study at this moment. All shoppers, they have a very different mentality at this moment. There's no way they care about bags. They care about, those kind of things. It's kind of not essential for them at that moment. So it's kind of fun fact for at the background of this study. But I do like the idea because I also just joined UFA like 2-3 years ago. I feel like if there's any connections, especially through like Sustainable Tucson, if you guys have any connections, can pull us, get in touch with, for example, some even just local stores or any grocery store, they're interested in being collaborative. We can conduct some field experiment there, posting, we're using different posters at different time, of course, do some control to really test what if if we use some message, are they actually helpful, effective in changing some behavior? That would be really cool. That would be a really nice study.
That's an interesting offer.
Put on our agenda for the next zero waste meeting.
Yeah, our zero waste committee did reach out to Sprouts last summer to see if we could get a dialogue going on the use of disposable bags, and we reached out to their corporate office in Phoenix, and we thought because they're regional, we might have some success as opposed to being a big national chain, but they didn't want to talk to us.
Okay.
Which I was disappointed, but I think the zero waste working group should think about your offer and see if maybe we take another shot at Sprouts, or maybe we reach out to another chain in the community, a grocery chain. My big pet peeve is that I don't see signage, and I know shelf space is a premium in a grocery store, but I don't see any promotional effort. I don't see signage. Yeah, once in a while you'll get a pat in the back from the checkout, but there's nothing to entice people to think about it right up front when they walk into the store. The reusable bags are put in places that are very visible as well. And again, shelf space is premium, but I just think that there's some room or opportunity for improvement there to at least approach their customers and try to do some things to promote the reusable bags.
Exactly. That would be lovely. I sometimes really wonder, this is actually will help them, right? Help them because plastics bags, they still need to pay for them because they offer that freely to the customers. They still need to buy them. I guess they probably just build in the price into the grocery, but still, that's not going to hurt them, in my opinion, hurt the stores. So if any of them, of course, there could be different concerns from their ends, but if there are any connections, we would gladly, appreciate that. We can, conduct something really from a real world perspective.
Rain, I had a comment on one of the things you said earlier. You said that one of the combinations of messages you didn't test out was the combination of, I believe, dynamic and injunctive norms.
Yes.
That pair to me sounds like the maximum social pressure that you could put on somebody. So I think that's likely to be the one that's most impactful.
Right, exactly. Sadly, okay, so what happened was we have already designed all the conditions. We have lots of conditions. The condition, we need to have a certain number of people. We need to have like 70, 80 people to really reach the power for statistical analysis. And then we actually had another, my colleague, my academic sister, another collaborator on this project. She came later. She did not join at the beginning. And then she actually brought about the idea of dynamic norm. Neither of us, me or Taylor, thought about it. She brought out the idea. We're like, oh, we already have so many conditions. We cannot really, we only have limited found for, pay such and such number of participants. How can we afford to have two more? Well, two more would be the maximum. So that's the reason why we only added the dynamic, descriptive, and injunctive norm. Otherwise, we would love to have some combinations, right, to test that. But yeah, who knows? That one was actually the one seems like working really well. So yeah.
It just seems like what's really going on here is an emotional response to the issue, and not to the issue, but how people respond to me when I do this. So saying it's people will like you if you do, and it's trending. Those two things seem to me to be the most powerful.
True. That's super true. Yeah, we start to realize that as well. Yeah, it's definitely something to be tested in the next study. Might be if we eventually get any grocery store on board, we could literally test that message as a real message in their store, right? And we can even just test that, like having posted at different spaces, different places where we can test different messages, where we can test at different time, things like that. I think that would be really fun and also interesting to see the results.
I wanted to mention, we have a couple of students on our Zero Waste working group from the University of Arizona, and they're working on a project, developing a project proposal where they're going to approach the sustainability office at the U of A to see if they do a pilot the use of reusable takeout containers at a couple of the dining halls, which sort of fits in with your effort, and they're working on that proposal now and hope to have something in the next month or two that they can shop to the sustainability folks at the university.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah, if they also want to reach out or any collaborative activities, we'd be really glad as well.
Yeah, I'll forward them your email contact.
Sounds good. Yeah, perfect. Alrighty, any other questions? If they could get the delivery routes to come back to pick up the way. Right, that's very true. Okay, yeah, thank you everyone. I think we're pretty much at the time, and really appreciate you spend your precious time come listen to us. Yeah, Donya, do you have a last minute question or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know there were some efforts to repeal that law that makes it illegal for communities to ban plastic bags. And I was curious if in Arizona, I'm curious if anyone has an update about those efforts.
We don't.
It's not doable in Arizona and several other states. The chemical industry came into the state and got some legislation passed that preempts local governments from regulating or taxing or banning the use of plastic bags. I think Bisbee, this happened after Bisbee City Council passed an ordinance, and they jumped on it pretty quickly. So there's no local governments don't have the authority. Now that I would love to see local governments come together and try to regain that authority to do something like that, but that they'll have to take that up with the legislature.
Basically, it would take a change in the dominant party in the legislature here in Arizona. So that's something to keep in mind when you decide who to vote for in the upcoming elections. Yeah.
One question comes to mind, and that's, is this level of research able to quantify the likely impacts of these things? I get the impression you don't have that kind of data yet.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of quantify, we would be able to actually quantify through more sophisticated inferential statistics such as regression analysis, which we haven't got a chance to do. But we will be able to, for example, we can quantify what's a statistical predictive power of a certain variable in the regression model when we factor in lots of things, such as when we control for example, their demographic information, as I just presented, and also some other their attitudes, things like that. We can actually factor those in and then see what's the predictive power of a certain variable, such as their perceived norms, their dynamic norm, things like that, in terms of predicting their behavior intention. Yes, the answer is we will be able to quantify that through statistical analysis. We just don't have that data yet. We will be, it's on our plate. We're going to do it probably later this summer. Just get it going.
I'm just curious as to whether the most impactful messaging we can come up with is going to have a substantial impact on what people do, because we might not need to try to mandate it if it's fairly effective.
Exactly. That is our goal, right? We're trying to use a social norm message is not the law. It's not like regulation. We're trying to really use those messages to generate or to promote behavior, which has been literally demonstrated very helpful throughout decades of research. That's the reason why we believe in social norms' power in getting people, engage in those activities. We just have to think about waiting or for different issues, different conditions, what is the most important, what is the most powerful message. And to your question, it's another interesting point, how even if we can see, okay, a certain message or induction is actually working, is generating some impact, but what is the impact? How much is the impact, which will be described over the effect size. We can see what is the effect size of different variables, of different message inductions. We will be able to get that data. Most of the time, unfortunately, in social science, the effect size is not huge. You're not going to see a huge effect size as compared to some STEM field. But as long as we see some substantial effect size, that could help us to understand that message is actually working. And plus we can do like meta-analysis or like longitudinal studies. That's something I like to do personally. I like to do multiple studies rather than just one study, right? So we can test that repeatedly to see if that effects will sustain in the next study. So that can further validate the findings from a previous study, which is called replication. So I personally would do something like that to help understand the effects.
Well,
I'd like to thank Rain and Taylor for taking time to be with us this evening. Lots of interesting information, it's got me thinking back and forth about some things, and I'm hoping that our Zero Waste Working Group can find a way to collaborate with you on a project to kind of continue down the road.